Okay. And we're live.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining the ThoughtSpot ACE team, the AI and Analytics Center of Excellence. We are your trusted advisors on your data and AI journey. And as all three of us were at Snowflake Summit last week, we wanted to share some of our top takeaways. We're going to start broad, big. What did we hear in the keynotes? Go a little deeper. What did we hear in different breakout sessions, if you could score a registration for one of them, and then what was happening at the ThoughtSpot booth and some product announcements there. So we're going to start with Jane Smith, who traveled on a very long flight from London to San Francisco, our field CDAO, EMEA. Jane, this was your first Snowflake Summit, right?
First time with the big one, yes. And what a conference it was, Cindi. Quite the experience.
Yeah, and I tried to warn you. I tried to give you a point of reference for our listeners and people tuning in. How would you describe it, say, compared to the Data Cloud World Tour in London or Sweden or Big Data London?
Oh, gosh. You know what? I would describe it as very, very American, very US, just very, very positive, very, very enjoyable, very, everything is awesome. Everything is really good. And it was just a really pleasant thing to be part of. There's a lot of theater. There was a lot of fun. The excitement levels were high. As a British person, I felt like I had the enthusiasm of someone opening a utility bill, but it was, it's a great way to level up my enthusiasm.
Very American. That's a fun, interesting word choice. Yes. I know when the polar bears came to hug you, you said to me, oh boy, we are in America, aren't we?
Well, the Arctic, but yeah.
Now, Sonny, as we had another video right before Summit, I'll just say it's great to have you back at ThoughtSpot. Sonny Rivera is our principal data and AI strategist, both a strategist and a hands-on practitioner, but also a Snowflake superhero. So how many summits was this for you?
I don't know. I feel like I've been at all of them. I think this is maybe 7 total. And I think I have been at least since they've come back from COVID, I've been at all of the in-person ones. So I've been doing a little while.
Yeah. And actually I promised, I forgot to do this. I have to do this. I have to share the legendary video of you from your first Snowflake Summit. Talk about being data-driven. Sonny did a breakout using data for really good barbecue. So we'll have to bring that up. Sonny, let's stay with you. So the keynotes. Now, Jane was lucky enough to get into the actual keynote Monday evening. So she was in the main room. Sonny and I were running around the exhibit hall trying to just find a spot where we could hear. But give me one of your top takeaways from one of the keynotes.
Well, one thing I do want to say, Cindi, first of all, this was probably the biggest summit that they've ever had. I did go to the very first summit in 2019, I think it was. There were 2,000 of us, and that included vendors, right? So there were 25,000 folks there. It was big, and it was a little bit chaotic, right? We couldn't even get into the to the keynote. The big things that I saw, obviously there was the rebrand, right, of co-work.
No. So don't rush through that. People who couldn't go, you've got to parse it out for them. So yeah, 20,000 people or more than 20,000 people in person, online. So give us the rebranding. What happened?
Well, we have Snowflake Intelligence, right? And that has now become co-work. So you're going to see those become interchangeable. There was also Snowflake Cortex Code, right? And colloquially, everyone has been calling it Cocoa in any way. And I think they just took on to what was already happening in the marketplace. But I think definitely you can see the emphasis on that agentic layer, that agentic plane, and that'll come up a bit as we keep this conversation going.
Yeah, good. Jane, what about you? What were some key takeaways from the keynote that you think everyone should be aware of?
Well, my highlight was that I got to see one of the keynote speakers, who was Daniela Amodai, and she was brilliant. It was really, really great to see her. But maybe building on Sonny's point when he talked about the control plane, one thing that came through a lot with the keynotes was context. And I feel like every year in AI, there's a word of the year, isn't there? Last year was agentic, and this year the word is context. And it seems to go together with the word moat. And I felt that really came across in the keynote speeches. Context is the new moat. And when you think what that means, it kind of, the way it makes sense is, to me anyway, is you really have zero competitive advantage from a model now. Your proprietary data is your entry point, and then your context is the moat. So if you are a chief data officer, you've got to treat your context like software. Your metadata, your lineage, your semantic definitions, they need to be versioned, governed, continuously improved. And that just for me was the big day one keynote. Context, it's your moat. Yeah,
context is king. That was even coming out of the Gartner Summit. And of course, I had the privilege of joining both Prakolpa, the CEO and founder of Atlan, as well as Jessica Talisman, ontology and context layer expert, on an overflow standing room only hot takes on context layers, semantic layers. Why now? And to me, some of the biggest, let's say, fallacies and mistakes, Jane, you use the term the fallacy of one, but I say it's a false hope to think that you're just going to have one artifact. Context is sometimes in somebody's head. Sometimes they're explaining it while they're typing a natural language question. Sometimes it lives in existing dashboards. But I think organizations, they would like to wish that they could have one. And so there was a lot of talk around OSI, semantic layers, some new capabilities coming from Snowflake's Horizon catalog, and then also Cortex sensing. So I want to talk about that, and then we're going to come back to where ThoughtSpot fits with this. So Sonny, what do you think? Is there catalog washing, context washing? What did you make of some of these things?
Well, I think, one, as much as Snowflake wanted everyone to say the answer to things were Cocoa, right? Really, what we heard over and over was context. So I agree with you. I think there's some, context washing, and I also think there's some confusion in this space. When we say context, the conversation, we got to sit down with Jessica Talisman and speak with her around what really makes up context. It really just exposes that the industry doesn't necessarily have a full grasp of an impact of metadata and ontologies and taxonomies. And sometimes those can be scary words, right? Lots of syllables, as well as semantic layers. So I think there is a good bit of confusion in that space. And there's an opportunity in there for folks to realize that these agentic layers that we are seeing really are only as good as the semantic layer that they're laying on top of.
Otherwise they hallucinate.
Exactly right. And I think Christian brought this out. He said, they were running Cocoa with no context layer, and they were getting about a 26% accuracy rate. And then when they added in, which would be private preview, their Horizon context, they got to 86%. You're still wrong 14% of the time. Now do that over many.
What's our revenue? What's our profit? Is this patient? Should I readmit them? What's the blood type? 14%.
Drug testing if you're a farmer.
Plus or minus.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Not good. Yeah, I do think so. So I think the one thing we agree on, it is critical. It's essential for going from probabilistic LLMs to deterministic SQL output. But the degree that every player in the ecosystem has figured this out, whether it's Snowflake, Databricks, DBT, ThoughtSpot, other agents that are interacting, Atlan, your catalog, or other catalogs as well. So I would say don't be led down that fallacy of one, as Jane likes to say. And I will also just tell you, this is probably the #1 topic that the three of us take on in our one-on-one strategy calls with customers in exec roundtables. And we did have both Jessica and Tony Seal on the Data and AI Chief podcast. So leverage us. If you're a customer, you get to reach out to us. If you're a prospect, you got to meet us at an event. I want to peel a little bit more on context is important for hallucinations, but it's also important. So token maxing and surprise bills are hitting people. So what came out of the keynotes that you were excited about that changes here? Sonny, you want to take that?
Well, I mean, one, token maxing, right? This is just this bizarre concept to me, that let's go out and use as much as we can. I get that we want our fields, our operations to maybe change their way of thinking, but the lack of focusing on value and outcomes is somewhat bizarre to me. And I can't believe CDOs, Jane, you and I talk about what CDOs value all the time, would see value in this. So I think it's, and I'm hoping that this concept is short-lived, but we've already seen major companies saying we've run through our context budget, or our budget for the year for tokens.
Yeah,
and
Uber's publicly spoken about that, and then others off the record have shared the same.
Yeah, and there's been some other stories out there, right? There's been some, hey, we're spending lots and lots on tokens without getting value from that, not necessarily. And these can be just effectively, hello, how are you? Right?
Yeah. And so I think of token maxing, you both might be too young to remember this, but when computers were first coming out for every business worker, some people were playing Tetris. And they had a screensaver. If the manager walked by, if the boss walked by, then a spreadsheet popped up. So it could look like you were using your computer.
Every time you think I'm working.
Yeah, so I'm having flashbacks to that now. But I appreciated, so you two have to keep me honest because there were so many announcements, and what's in private preview, early access, or GA there's a lot there. But I do like some of the governance controls that Snowflake announced for cloud costs. It was unclear to me if it's going to apply to your token costs. Of course, ThoughtSpot, we take care of your token costs. That's on us. So we make sure that the SQL is efficient and the token usage is efficient. But anything else on some of these controls that you were impressed with?
Is that question to me? Yeah. I think so. I think a couple of areas. One, with tokens, we saw just years ago consumption of Snowflake credits, and that really gave rise to FinOps, right? And I think you're going to see this more FinOps approach to tokens and AI usage. And Snowflake also announced some additional things around their adaptive compute to manage controls there. So I thought that was great from managing the sizing of your warehousing and your workloads and being efficient in those cost areas. So yeah, those were a couple of things I was interested in.
Let's go to some of the breakouts and customer stories and best practices that we learned. So first off, Jane, to have 3 EMEA customers speak on ThoughtSpot's behalf and Snowflake, some incredible stories. What would you like to share from any of the ones that you hosted or were able to attend?
Oh, it's great to fly the flag for Europe for EMEA. Woo! Oh gosh, so I hosted a session with Augustin Del Rio. He's the CEO of Gallus Insight, really interesting company. They are a very data intensive company and they specialize in the mortgage loan space. And I suppose one of the reasons I really enjoyed speaking with him because it shows AI. It's right there at the CEO level. It's an imperative for a CEO, especially a very data one as deeply dedicated to data as Augie was. And he had really interesting things to say. And he talked about, walking around the summit and how you are 7 years ahead of everybody else in San Francisco, especially in the Snowflake Summit. And he loved it and he got a lot of energy from it. But it's sort of a different world to the reality that he was in, where you have to deploy these things, you have to implement them, you have to bring people on the journey. And I liked how he introduced that element of what it's like in a company when you have to, these things don't embed themselves, the transformation is not as effortless as they looked. And he had this principle of just simplicity. You don't need every single metric, you don't need every single agent, you don't need every single capability. You sort of need what you need and keep your focus on that. That was a highlight for me. I would like to make a nod to Booking.com, who were also there. I didn't speak with them, but they had a big presence at the event. And Booking.com, they just operate on such a massive scale. Their data landscape, it involves hundreds of thousands of sources, tens of thousands, probably millions of workflows, tables, so much that powers their decision making. And they had this lovely quote. They said, when we introduced ThoughtSpot, we immediately saw our backlog dropping and our analysis using the live boards on ThoughtSpot to find ways to drive our business forward. And I just felt very warm and fuzzy when I heard that. So those are my top insights, Cindi.
Yeah, and driving the business forward is what it's about. I often say sometimes these shiny toys, we focus too much on the how. We've got to anchor it in the why. And so if I think about a really important use case, intuitive surgical, the why, we are nothing without our health. To hear Ajay from Intuitive Surgical, Laura McDonald moderated this breakout. And I liked the way he framed things about AI for BI and BI into AI and that seamless workflow. I thought it was also interesting. He described ThoughtSpot as AI for numbers. Now, we do more than just numbers. We do unstructured data as well. But when there is so much AI noise, I liked the way he described that. It made it really clear. And then from Europe, I had the pleasure of sitting with Ryan Green from Data Cloud News and Frankie from Thrive Learning, the Chief Product Officer. So our team will post a link to that recording in the chat. But Frankie made the point, why did they buy a data AI agent, Spotter, versus building? He's a builder. And he mentioned two things. First, the speed to market with AI, that they could go live within 2 weeks to all their customers. And that is how they win in the market. Of course, I felt that warm fuzzy as well, pride of our product team. Frankie said that they have pride how quickly they innovate and that the innovation was matched by ThoughtSpot's innovation. And I often say that I feel like our product team is shipping faster than I can keep up, as well as the industry. So a lot of innovation. 56,000 users within 2 months. Just incredible.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, Sonny, you also supported some hands-on labs, and you did a breakout at the booth on the integration between Snowflake Semantic Views and ThoughtSpot Spotter semantics. Tell us the value of this. What was the reaction?
So it was huge. We had 2 hands-on labs on 2 different sessions, 2 different days, fully packed, and folks are really interested in that. How can I leverage assets that I may already have? So one, how are you better together with Snowflake. So we were able to show the leveraging of Snowflake, even using Snowflake Semantic Views with a two-way integration, pulling those in and leveraging those semantics, making it really easy, and then showing, hey, how we can generate dashboards, answer questions, and use that context really, really quickly. I think what I would see coming out of that is the commitment to interoperability, right? Obviously, we've been involved with OSI, and we're committed to that. Snowflake's committed to interoperability. And I think Snowflake is moving to where the market is, where ThoughtSpot has always known that you don't have to own a data format to have a customer relationship, right? What we're doing is there's a bigger shift here that really is around having our data plane, our semantic layer and context layer, and then an agentic surface layer. And so I think Snowflake is kind of coming to where the market has already gotten to.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, ThoughtSpot patented, pioneered this really more than 10 years ago. So it's proven, and really it's just the interoperability as well as context and memory that we've added recently. So it's enriching the context layer based on the way people are actually asking questions and storing it inside dashboards. We do this also with dbt as well, of course. Now, there has been an evolution of the modern data stack. And Jane, you did an interesting post on LinkedIn, I think this morning, or I only saw it this morning, maybe you did it yesterday, on, full stack, one throat to choke versus best of breed. What's your take?
Did you say one throat to choke?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Is that an American thing?
It's a new one for me. That's a new one for me. I like it. Kind of dark. Yeah, I did. And the post, Cindi, was inspired by Snowflake because I had this, this thought. This is not from the keynotes. It wasn't from the sessions. This was from the customer conversations that I had throughout the conference. And so many customers shared these stories with me that it made me think, back to when I was head of data strategy and I had the opportunity to design a data stack from scratch. And it was, I think there is no designing a data stack from scratch, which is awkward if your job is to design a data stack from scratch. The reality is that any big company that has any acquisitions, any subsidiaries, any complexity at all, it's never going to be as neat as the consultants make it look on the diagram. And we spend a lot of time. I certainly did. Don't make my mistakes. I spent a lot of time asking the question, which is the vendor that will take the crown, which is the big player. And as we know, all the big players right now are looking to own all the stack. They can all do everything. And I was, spending my time on this. And it took me a while to realize the right question was not which vendor, which supplier takes the crown. The right question was, how do we build a stack that evolves together? How do we build something where all the parts, the best parts, work together? I think that was my big takeaway from my conversations.
Yeah, and it reminds me of a quote from a guest we had on the Data and AI Chief podcast, Deepak Jose, previously Mars, now at Niagara Bottling. And he said, rather than built to last, we should be designing for built to adapt. And for sure, when you think about how quickly the LLMs are evolving, you need that built to adapt. I often, because I have been buying, evaluating, scoring markets and market players for 30 years now, I advise people to think of strategic differences and then feature functions. So a core strategic differentiator, where does a vendor make their money? ThoughtSpot will always be best in analytics and that depth of understanding of the way business users work. That's where we make money. We do not make money on driving more compute or consumption. In fact, when we're inefficient there, it impacts our gross margin. So we're going to be super efficient on that. Others, they're bolting these on. It's a checkbox just so they can drive more compute. I don't know, Sonny, you recently also went through a bake-off and met with many customers. How would you frame this?
Well, yeah, and I think you're right. When you look at what is their core competency, what are they really trying to do? And you can see that over and over, especially as you look across lots of vendors will say, I want to own the stack. But, going through those bake-offs to say, are we just text to SQL, or are we really identifying insights and having the ability to take actions and driving agentic analytics, right? And I do bring these back to those various planes I mentioned. I think these come up over and over again, a data plane. And I think vendors can operate very well in that data plane. And then there's the semantic layers plane, what I'm calling my planes here. And, then this agentic surface or this agentic plane. And so I do think that, you look at what's their core competency. So I agree with you 100%, Cindi.
Right. So I'll ask our producers if we have questions in the chat for any of us.
I don't think at this time, but if you want to end on any notes before we wrap it up.
Yes. Okay. So last week was Snowflake. Next week, Sonny, where are you off to next week?
I am off to Databricks next week. So in San Francisco last week, here at home, and then back in San Francisco. But I'm loving it and really enjoy it.
Good. So he still has some one-on-ones, and he'll be speaking about semantic layers, context layers next week as well. Jane, where can people next meet you?
Oh, at ThoughtSpot's London event. Sorry, took a moment. Where can they meet me? ThoughtSpot's London event. It's July 7th, the Nobu Hotel. It is our agentic analytics playbook. And the reason I'm so excited for this is see this American level of excitement. This time a year ago, we had our agentic event, and it was so new. It was so theoretical. It was very, what's agentic? How's it going to change things? What do I do? And now, a year later, we have such a huge body of work that we see from our customers, what they've done in agentic, what they've learned, what's worked well, what hasn't worked. And we're going to share it. We have amazing customers, people like Roche Pharmaceutical, Thrive Learning, Superdrug. I'll be talking to Jeff from Dunelm, which is a furniture retailer in the UK. And we'll have all the usual, the ThoughtSpot leadership, including you, Cindi. You'll be there. And other fun things, the dogs. I did have the dog. The dogs, the notebooks.
Okay.
The water bottles, dogs and books. Just remember that, dogs and books.
I feel like we need to design an agent for Jane that's a cat themed agent to add to our suite of agents. Yes. So that's when you can next meet me in person, also in London. But also tomorrow, Wednesday, we drop a new episode of the Data and AI Chief Supply Chain, Boris from Legentia, the CIO there. So tune in for that, and we'll see you online.